Hi everyone, this is Ferran from Ironhack, and I'm super happy to be here for the webinar from SoundCloud to Wolt, Tips to Build a Successful UX Career with Basim Al-Baker. So today we're gonna interview Basim. He's a senior UX researcher, so make sure to drop your questions in the chat so we can answer them at the end of the session. So first of all, we will ask you to activate the chat in the menu below so we can engage during the session. You can drop the questions there or in the Q&A box. And maybe we can start by saying where you're connecting from to today's session. And before starting with the interview, I want to introduce you all, Basim. So hello, Basim, first of all.
Hi.
So Basim is a seasoned UX practitioner with experience in leading qualitative research from music streaming to micromobility and beyond. So over the last 9 years, he's successfully led UX researcher teams and projects at SoundCloud, Zalando, Blinkist, Dance, and Wolt. Very impressive names. So with a passion for education and mentorship, he's guided budding UX students to find their path and establish their own career in tech. So again, thanks for being with us today. Let me see in the chat. We see people from Australia, Germany, Spain. Welcome everyone. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the first question that I have is like, how has each experience contributed to your overall learning in the field of UX?
Yeah, thank you also for the warm welcome. It's also very humbling to be here, 9 years into my career and being able to share some of my thoughts and with this lovely audience here as well. So multicultural. So your question, like how each kind of experience contributed to my overall learning, it's really hard to kind of like measure each experience, but I know each one was valuable, even the experiences that were more difficult, that were more challenging, that maybe even some experiences that might have been defined as toxic, they all contributed to me understanding better like what and how to approach this career. So I think like as you progress through your career as well, when you're just starting out, I mean, UX was not my first ever career. I was actually selling air conditioners a very long time ago and transitioned into UX 9 years ago. With each experience, you meet new people to kind of learn from. You meet like you work with different stakeholders, you work with different teams, you absorb information and you just kind of like, yeah, run with the punches. I mean, I think when you're working in tech, it's never a smooth ride. And I think each experience taught me a lot more than what I expected. I mean, I've had the privilege to work at different industries: music, micromobility, retail, even delivery services. I thought I would learn based on the industry, but actually I learned based on the teams and the processes and the size of the organization, much more than just working in a different field each time. So yeah, each experience has been great.
And talking about all these experiences with all of this perspective of 9 years, what is something you would say to your intern self that was just starting compared to yourself now?
Yeah, so that would be around 8.9 years ago when I was an intern starting off at SoundCloud. I think everything today during this whole talk, I'm just trying to give answers that are authentic, that are true to me, true to that time. And when I look back at the time when I was an intern, it was a very different period. I think UX research was a really hot kind of job. Most people still didn't really understand what we do. I think it's still the case now, but I think it wasn't as well kind of like integrated or understood as it is today. I mean, the obvious things to tell myself as an intern, be proactive, look for projects that, you can have a really strong impact in, seek feedback, find those moments where you can improve. Those are the obvious things. I think my personal answer is to actually just look after yourself personally, because especially when you are in that junior of a position, um, it's often very easy to say like, you know what, my work-life balance isn't as important as proving my worth. I honestly think your worth is your work-life balance. Your worth is your rest. Your worth is the moments that give you life. Um, Work is not worth, in my opinion. I mean, I'm happy to discuss that later on, but yeah, if I was looking back, I would say, hey, close that laptop and go enjoy the sun, which is very ironic because it is sunny right now and I'm on my laptop. But let's ignore that for now.
No, that's a really good first tip. After we're gonna go with another tips for people that want to join the industry. But for now, I want to focus more on the career and your path. Like asking how does the position of UX research differentiate with various kind of companies and the industries that you work for?
So just to kind of define it as well, the position is a dedicated UX researcher where you are
Mm-hmm,
working to understand user needs. You're working with different stakeholders to spearhead projects that get you better insights on your customers so you can better cater to them. That really is a position that is unlocked once you reach a certain size of a company. So I would say you don't need like a dedicated user researcher when you're very small.
mm-hmm,
I think once you reach past a certain point, then it does make sense to have somebody like actually owning that whole process from end to end. Um, but I mean, the smallest company I worked at one point was around 20 people, but then it grew to like 80 or so. So, I mean, I think the position of UX research does really change based on the maturity of the product, based on how, established you are within the business, but also like the size of the organization. So, um, and now that when I look back at it as well, it also does matter like how kind of like junior or senior you are in your career. So when you're starting off as a UX researcher, when you're learning how to like, create impact in this field, you are mostly executing on things. You're executing on things, you're running interviews, running user tests, creating reports, boom, next thing, next thing, next thing. So it's kind of like changes as you get more established within the industry, because then you're kind of like running a function. So maybe actually you're looking at the overall big picture of a feature or overall big picture of the entire product end to end. And then you're kind of like also enabling these conversations at a higher level. And you're looking after not just the execution of projects, but the planning of projects, making sure those insights live on beyond the life cycle of it. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it absolutely does change depending on the kind of size of the team. If you're a UX research team of one, you're going to have different challenges compared to like even a bigger user research team, which can cover different subjects and different points of the user journey.
Mm-hmm. So did this influence the decision making throughout your career as a senior researcher at Wolt to a mid-level researcher on SoundCloud? I mean, it's like different industries, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, like I think what comes with any career or vocation, the more established you are, um, the more confidence you have, the kind of like more able you are to analyze a situation and more able you are to kind of like um, just be upfront about like, okay, we have to make a decision. What are the obstacles that are in our way to make the best decision? What do we need to align on right now to make sure that this is the correct decision? When I think for me, as I got more senior, I was less afraid to say no to things. Um, it is often a very powerful decision to say no to a project, to say that no, actually, I don't think this will get us what we think is valuable. And um, I think that is more difficult as you're starting out. But then I think the wonderful thing about this job as a UX researcher is um, the art of asking questions, the right questions at the right time. is not just important for your day-to-day work, asking users and understanding their needs, but also understanding the needs of your stakeholders and the people that work around you. So yeah, I mean, I think there are some tools and questions you can ask like regardless of the industry, regardless of seniority, and they're just all about trying to get alignment and understand whether you're or not you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, with you mentioning this, the word that comes to my mind is skills. So, of course, with the figure of UX researcher, there are so many skills. Yet, how important was the skill of research when you were starting your career?
Oh, super important. I mean, I also have to acknowledge that when I was starting my career, when I got the position as an intern at SoundCloud, there was a lot that I didn't know. There was a lot that I needed, some guidance with. I kind of knew the theoretical side, but not the practical side. But I think if you Google UX research skills right now, you're going to get a really, really long list of like soft skills and hard skills. It's worth exploring like what resonates with you. But I think what really boils down for me, what was super important about research starting off my career is just taking a step back, asking the right questions, listening to the answers, and trying to dig a little bit deeper into like what people really mean. And I think also it's not enough to just ask the questions and then have the answers. It's actually about showing those answers and documenting them and making sure that people understand what is being said. So I mean, the skill of research, yeah. I mean, as a user researcher, you do need to be skilled in it. At the same time, I think figuring out how those skills make an impact in your day-to-day work with your colleagues and not just with users is super important.
So, regarding the user experience, do you believe that research is the key element in developing or getting a successful career in UX? Or there are other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it even goes to like product design and product managers, and even if you're like looking to build your own thing, it is really fundamentally important to be able to understand what your customers need, what they want, what they find important. Also, what are people, indifferent to? What do they not care about? I mean, I think when there's like a really big gap between someone being like, oh, I have an idea that makes money, I'm gonna go launch that out into the world because I believe it's a good idea, and then it being met with indifference because it actually didn't resonate on a specific need or it wasn't what people expected. That's where you're going to find the mismatches. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend anyone who even has like small interest in UX or in product or in business development, to just spend some time to understand how to understand your users. I think that's really, really important, and it's a skill that you're going to be able to take with you into many different like aspects of your career as well.
Mhm. So I want to ask you to give us a walkthrough of how you conduct research to give the best possible experience for the user. Like if you can give us an example or something.
Mhm. I I like this question because when I read it, like the best possible experience for the user, it made me kind of think back to times when you are face to face with a participant who seems very nervous. And if you're in doing like a user interview or doing like a user test for the first time, I think it can be very, very kind of anxiety inducing because you're like, oh no, I have to expose a part of my life, or I have to, there's also this phenomenon where you have to like impress the person that you're speaking to. So, for example, one of the like kind of bad questions to ask in a survey or in an interview context is like, how often do you go to the gym? Because people will give an answer that won't reflect the truth, but will rather reflect like, oh, if I don't say 3 times a week, then that person is going to think less of me. So I think it's really important to give the best possible experience for the user. If we're speaking about like interview, user test context, make sure you create a space that is welcoming, that is at the basic level safe, of course, that provides like a sense for that person that they're being listened to and that their thoughts matter and their opinion matters. I mean, I start off every interview and user test with like introduction to what is expected for the day, what they should know from a privacy and data handling context, and then also tell them, look, we're not testing you, we're not evaluating you, we are evaluating a product, and anything is welcome here, and I'm here to listen to you. Sometimes it even helps if you want to talk about certain aspects of their life, which maybe some people consider a bit more private. It helps to say like, listen, like I'm here to kind of understand like all of the different, you know, contextual parts of your life. Think of me as the person who's setting up like the stage for a play. I want to get the details right. I want to, so if I'm asking you what time you have breakfast in the morning and we're looking at something completely different, it's not because, you know, I care about what time you're having breakfast. It's because I want to get that one detail just right. So everything else makes sense and looks right as well. So yeah, I think it's really important to give a good experience for the user in those real life contexts when you're speaking to them directly. I mean, other example, like who here hasn't taken a bad survey or opened a survey from a product and then been like 20 questions? Why am I doing this? Like really, really think and evaluate like what you're putting onto your users if you're going to put it out there. That's why you should test your interview scripts and test your surveys with people. Friends and family are great, like, you know, for this kind of context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how often do you receive a blog in enhancing user experience when nothing seems to be indicating that a bad user experience?
Okay, so I guess the way I understood this question is like, how often do you find a situation where some metric maybe is telling you that something's not working, and then it doesn't appear to be a bad user experience on the surface level? Is that kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah? This is interesting because I think it's really important to define what a bad user experience is. I think there are some like measures out there, like there's something called the heuristics of usability, which allow you to look at different ideas of what are important within a good user experience versus a bad user experience. But I don't know, we don't talk about indifferent user experience all that often. Like, I think one thing that I think about a lot is like, look at streaming services right now. So streaming services, when Netflix came out and they you know released their kind of like online catalog of movies and TV shows, and you could access it for like a pretty low price a month, and then you suddenly had all of these different things that you could like watch and consume at your own pace. That was great, but then over time, like those services now, they're expensive. They're like, you know, the lowest tier is filled with ads. They are fragmenting content all over the place. Suddenly now everybody has to release streaming service. I'm looking at you, Paramount Plus. Sorry, hope there are no Paramount Plus employees here right now. But like, we have created an absolute like absolutely shitified experience, but like they're not bad on the surface level. It's just like the way it's come and the way it's gone means that we are creating like an experience which you know, am I going to pay like another 10 euros a month for another streaming service? No. Like there are more important things in this economy. There are more like, you know, important like ways to spend your time, way to spend your money. So I think it's really important to think about like, okay, if you see a drop in engagement or a drop in subscribers, go to those people that are canceling and understand their context. What is making them like actually go away from your service? What is the issue here? Try to capture that audience and really speak to them. And oftentimes they will say like, well, I'm just don't want to spend money on you anymore. And that is a reality we have to face. So then it's back to the drawing board to understand, okay, well, how can you create value in other ways? So I think it's just really important to get the feedback and get the opinions of those people who are not just signing, canceling from your product because they had a horrible experience where they got charged 10 times in 1 month instead of once. But people who are like, well, no, it's just not for me anymore. Why? Like, why is it not for you anymore? That's super important.
And now talking about opinions, but opinions not from the user, but from the team. When you're conducting a user research, for example, what are the key challenges when collaborating with stakeholders?
Yeah. So I think this is a really good exercise when you're starting a new job. When you're starting a new job or entering a new company, especially as a user researcher, or even before that, when you're interviewing with them, just ask the questions like, how can we work together as a UX researcher, as a designer, product, or whatever? Like, how can we best work together and collaborate in this role? Because then you start to understand some of the challenges that they face. You start to understand some of the things that keep them awake at night. And it's a really good exercise to run that with all of the people that you're working with, so that ideally you understand their situation enough so that if a challenge comes up, you can attribute it to something, or you can reference something, or you can at least just even be aware of it ahead of time. I mean, the key challenges that always come up, like, lack of alignment. So like lack of alignment, poorly defined research goals, lack of clear warning as to when the project needs to take place. So oftentimes in some previous jobs, I would dread opening my laptop and looking at Slack and being like, oh man, like what is this? And then you go inside and then we need insights in a week. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way, but okay, let's work together to figure something out. So I think it's just really comes down to setting clear expectations, aligning, and asking again the right questions at the right time. So ideally, if you're working together, it is a team effort, and it's not like, okay, you go do this so I can go do this. No. We sit together, we try to understand how this project can be successful, how it can be delivered on time or on budget. When are these insights actually going to be used? Because sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect between, oh, we need this project to be done now, but insights won't be used until quarter 4. Like, what? It's quarter 1. What's going on? So I do think it's important to at least get a bit of a heads up on how people would like to work with UX research, because oftentimes then you can help them understand what is and isn't possible, what is and isn't reasonable. And then also just be like, hey, show me what you're working on for the next 3 months, and then let's try to come up with something that works for both of us.
And
there's always going to be challenges. Yeah.
And now that you mentioned the alignments with different team stakeholders, did you encounter any time with any clash or lack of coordination between, let's say, design and product in your experience? And if so, how you navigate this type of situations?
Yeah, this happens a lot. So I think in my perspective, I'm sure this isn't a very hot take, but the larger a company gets, and the more let's say parts of the organization that get introduced, the more people that get introduced, the further away people often tend to be, the more siloed it becomes, the more of a disconnect there are between the OKRs and the yearly kind of goals, and between design, product, marketing, content, customer service, operations. Everybody has a different kind of goal. And then you have these quarterly or yearly strategy meetings where the whole company gets together and they talk about goals for X period of time, but there's just so many different things that are happening in different areas, and none of them, and I've never seen it work well, where one thing is effectively connected to another, They're all different. And that leads to like lack of coordination, that leads to meetings where people don't get invited, and then, somebody just hears about something for the first time. Of course, there's a better and a more ideal world, but this is the world that I've kind of like encountered many times.
Mm-hmm.
Navigating that is tough, and I think in my mind, it's really worth, again, going back to that alignment and then being like, okay, so what are we doing, and why are we doing this? Like, okay, so your boss's boss told you that you have to work on this thing. What is that? What is the end goal there? So, I mean, I'm gonna say sometimes you will have to just kind of swallow your pride and just get that thing done for that meeting with the CEO. Sometimes does happen. But then talk about why that wasn't good. Like meet afterwards, have like a reflection, or how do you call them? I'm missing the word right now, but like when you kind of just like evaluate like, something,
Mm-hmm.
and try to learn from it. Like, okay, how are we going to avoid this situation next time? Because I'm sure there's many players in that process who are unhappy for different reasons, and like it's important to get those on the table and do better and set better kind of like boundaries, or set better principles or ways of working to avoid that later on.
And for example, working as on user experience, so at the same time you're like considering what's best for the user, but at the same time meeting the needs or the expectations of the company. So did you, in your experience, did you encounter with ever a confrontation between these two, and with these two, the needs of the user, but then the company?
Yeah, I mean, if we're being real here, there's also another pillar that often comes up, which is like technical feasibility. That's also super important, like because oftentimes you can pick something which is good for the user, could also have a bit of an impact on the business, but then your engineers won't be able to build it because the code is like, messy, or it's been untouched for a long time, or you just don't have the resources to like actually create that picture perfect version that you're working towards. So yes, there's often been like a lot of times where you have to kind of juggle or at least consider different aspects. It always comes down, at least in my experience, to user needs, business needs, and technical feasibility. Actually, if anybody in the chat has any other kind of like pillars which they also examine, I'd be really curious to know, because those are the three I often think of. And navigating them is often just trying to think about, okay, let's measure the impact of doing or not doing it. So when you step outside of like just thinking, okay, this will make us 100 million more euros per year, versus I'm pretty sure that's also going to result in like 10,000 more hours of customer service dealing with complaints. Like really just try to get the right people in the room, get a workshop together, whatever format works for you, and then evaluate those different decisions or non-decisions, like really, really concretely and really transparently. And then you can use some kind of like matrix or scoring system to try to understand, okay, what are our next steps? What makes sense in this scenario? Again, I'm going to be a realist here. Like sometimes companies do make bad decisions which are not in the interest of their users. Um, you know, I tried to cancel something the other day and I have to write like a letter in. Like, why do I have to do that in 2024? Like, and I do think that even if a company stands by a decision which in the end wasn't good, it's really important to keep bringing up, as people who are working on the ground, who are often being forced to work with these decisions that are made from higher up. challenge it. Be like, okay, so what did we learn from that? What happened? Well, like what are the early numbers looking like? When will we know whether this was a success or not? If it wasn't a success, what will we be doing next? I think
Mhm.
uh, it's important to keep people accountable. That's
I
how I
think
see it.
I think someone is asking, David is asking if you're based in Germany, because I think because of the letter, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, I'm based in Germany. Yeah, yeah. I have to write a.
Um,
I'm sending that letter after this webinar.
so now changing a little bit the focus and talking about trends. How important are current design trends, and how do you navigate it through your work?
Like trends are important. I mean, I think whether or not they're interesting to you as an individual is going to be a different story. I do think there is some level of importance to keep up to date with what's happening. I think it's really dangerous when you just rush in blindly and be like, "This is the new trend, let's go." Like, okay, keep in touch with what's kind of going on and what's important, and see if it like actually can help your work or help you in your processes. I mean, okay, like before we got on this webinar, I was like, okay, open ChatGPT, maybe throw in a couple of questions in there. The answers that I got back from ChatGPT to the questions that we're talking through now were awful. Like they were just like, oh yeah, like exactly what you want to hear. And then I could write a LinkedIn article about it in 3 minutes, publish it, get 7 likes. Cool. Like great. And I don't necessarily think that that's the wrong approach for some people. I do think that it's dangerous to look at a trend and not evaluate it as like, okay, this is a movement. Is it good? Is this a good thing for society? Is this a good thing for our work and what we do like day to day? Do we want to leverage AI like before really understanding like the kind of like merits and demerits of it? I think that even taking one layer further, like when we're talking about user research, rather than trends, like maybe just keep in
Mhm,
touch with what's important with your audience. Don't
mhm,
try to jam the trends into the product or service. Think about like, okay, who is my target audience? What is important to them? And like just try to like effectively speak to them on that level. Um I think there's a big failure right now with some companies adopting AI chatbots as their and firing their customer support teams. And then me not being able to understand, okay, am I getting picked up from the airport today? Like, or do I have to book my
mhm.
own transport? Like, and you have to call and you have to write an email and then they get back to you within 3 to 5 days. You can't navigate this AI like thing. Is like, no, I need support right now. That's the point. So really just try to understand what is important and sure, like some people are more like interested in trends than others, but I don't necessarily think it makes a huge impact in my day-to-day work. But listening
Mhm.
to what's important does.
And which user experience research techniques and approaches have you found most effective in your work?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like asking what tool is right for the job. Like I could
Mhm.
probably change a light bulb with a screwdriver, but I don't think that's gonna be the right tool. And like wait, maybe there is a light bulb you can change with a screwdriver. Okay, anyway, jury's out. If you can change a light bulb with a screwdriver, then answer that in the comments, please. Um, I I really think if you break down like UX research techniques and approaches, it's not just the methods. It's not just like, okay, interviews, surveys, diary studies, usability tests, more ethnographic studies, which last even longer. I think it's really important to understand like, okay, what is the actual problem and what is the actual goal of the research? And then try to find the best fit, like technique and approach, given like the problem that's at hand, and the resources you have available, the time you have available. I will give maybe an anti-example to this. I think
Mhm.
surveys are actually a very dangerous technique, like to democratize, because anyone can write a survey. I think very few people can write a good survey. We were kind of talking about this before. It's so easy to write like a poorly formulated question that gives you bad answers. And if you create like a complex survey with lots of different questions, I pretty much guarantee the people you are going to get answers from are people who like to respond to surveys. That's a quite a niche group, to be honest with you. So I think it's really important to not just pick a method because, oh, it's easy, I can do it in 20 minutes. Um, just be really mindful of like, okay, what are the goals? What do I have at my disposal? Why are we doing this? And when do we need these insights by? And how are we going to start like using them? Then the method comes afterwards. So yeah, figure out your process up front to determine the method. And there's many ways of doing that. I think it's also even important to think about questions to ask before accepting a research brief or research proposal,
Mhm.
because sometimes you can find like just by asking a couple of questions like have you looked on any research that exists on this before? No. Okay. Is there any industry research which might actually help us like to gather insights on the scale that you want this to be? Mm, no, I haven't checked. Like it's more and more I find that it's important to do the work up front to really figure out whether or not a research project is important, or whether it's the right research project or it's the right timing. Um, you have to be nimble. You have to think on your feet. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And can you talk about a specific project of yours that you found specifically challenging for any reason and how you solved the problem?
Yeah.
If you can
Maybe
give a
actually,
specific example.
yeah, sure. Um, are there any actually researchers on this call now? Just do a yes or hi if you feel like it.
Yeah,
Because I
drop
think there's,
the comment. Yeah, drop
yeah,
the comment in the chat so to see if there's any
nice,
designers here. Let's see. Yes,
cool,
Katarina.
great.
I
Yeah,
bet
no, I
there's
mean,
more. Mhm.
I'm sure there are a few, and thank you for joining once again. Look, I do think I can talk about specific examples, but I think there are maybe certain things that I've noticed that are a theme, like a challenging theme, let's say. Um, I have absolutely seen in the last couple of years, especially like a real trend, to use that word again, for stakeholders and people in the company to want like two things, either at the same time or at different times. A research repository, so a database of insights collected throughout the years of every research project. And then number two, some kind of way to speak to users super frequently, whether it's every week or, I mean, God forbid, every day. I mean, that would be really intense. But like some kind of process which enables you to speak to users quickly and get them in the room and show and have stakeholders like, present projects and designs and stuff like that. I think those two things, when somebody has like a very, very clear idea of what they want, it's going to be really hard to succeed. Because um, there's just going to be like disappointment from all around. I mean, I've had more experience trying to incorporate a process where you speak to users, let's say every couple of weeks to the company and bring them in. And pre-COVID times, they would actually come to the office and we would create the space for that. Uh, I just think it's one of those challenges where you're like, okay, what is the actual goal here again? Like, why do we, like, I understand wanting to speak to users frequently, but why every week? What is the kind of rationale behind that? Who's going to be involved? Is that going to be my full-time job from now on? Like, am I going to have to find the people, source them? Um, I think it's really important to try to like understand, okay, when somebody is approaching me with this, how like much pain will it be to like to actually go with what they're saying and try to make it work in their eyes versus how much gain would it be for the company and for me and for my career, and for like, you know, actually like the needs of our users being kind of like communicated. um I just personally think it's one of those things that sometimes there's no satisfying everybody, and sometimes you have to also just again start with the MVP, like you know, product development. Like, what is actually the smallest but most impactful version of what you're asking for, whether it's a research repository or whether it's a process that gets people in the room speaking to you every so often. Like, how can we get from zero to a little bit further and start to learn, start to improve, and start to get, because you know, if I ask like a product manager who's telling me to do this, I'm just like, okay, so why don't we make your feature that you're working on do this like in, you know, 2 weeks? They're gonna give me the same answer. So I think it's worth speaking to people on their same on their level and understanding, okay, what's important, how can we do this? I mean, the same kind of like tenets of setting up any project. And then like just speaking to a specific example, I mean, yeah, we introduced it at several different companies. I introduced it at one company where we were 3 researchers. And we introduced this program where we're speaking to users on a regular basis. I believe we started with every 2 weeks, but we moved it to every 3 weeks because when we were doing a retrospective, it turns out that most people hated running this process, and it was like something that they really were not looking forward to because it was stressful, it was anxiety inducing, it was a lot of work, it was a lot of like different pieces to manage with stakeholders. If your prototype was late, well, you're going to be working on the interview script at 6 a.m. on Friday, you know, like, so I think it's important to align and then run these retrospectives. I think that's probably going to be my advice for any challenging project. And hopefully you have those learnings in place where you can reference them and do better the next time around.
Mhm. And now that we that you gave this advice, what are what would you say is the best advice or tips in finding the right target audience in user research?
Best advice and tips in finding the right target audience in user research. This is hard. I think it's like also when you're a company with like a small amount of users, like let's say you've just launched like a startup, like is your target audience going to be based on data if you only have like 500 users? Probably not a good idea. Like I would assume that your target audience would be something which is a little bit more aspirational, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I thought it was really interesting because I was just randomly today going through LinkedIn, and like I've observed this one startup that I'm like, I think it's a connection of a connection or something. And they have pivoted their idea. One, two. They're on their third pivot now. Like
Mm-hmm.
same branding, same logo, but like it's an entirely different product. And I think maybe that's also part of the learning. Like, okay, well, if you can't seem to find your target audience, or if your idea is not really resonating, then maybe pivoting is actually the way, especially if you're like an early stage startup and you can afford to do that. Once you have a more established product and service with more users, people are paying for your product, people are subscribing, there's money on the line, there's jobs on the line, then finding the target audience is, again, I think really looking back at like, okay, leveraging that research and that data to be able to create like models or visualizations or you know, whatever works for your company and your stakeholders to understand people. Like ideally, like you will have that level at a glance where you're like, okay, I understand this category or this category, this category. And then you have the real examples that are like linked to data and research that like support that, and you can do a deep dive on it. I'm being careful to not give answers here because personas, jobs to be done. I think there's wait, there's another one. There's like critical user journeys. That's another hot one right now. There's many different ways of kind of like personifying your audience and their needs. Or even just like, you know, visualizing like the different parts of the journey that are important to them. None of that matters if you don't like do some of the groundwork to understand like, okay, who do we have now? Who do we looking to target? Is that feasible? And also like, why are we looking to pivot from focusing on like home cooks to professional chefs? Like, why is that happening? And then it's again going back to, okay, are we looking at the business goals, the user needs, and like the feasibility? Because I think it's very, again, easy to be like, okay, our audience is stagnating. We need to bring in like another like level. Oh, professional chefs have money. Like, why don't, or do they? That's an assumption. Never assume. Like it's like, oh, there are a lot of professional chefs out there. Why don't we go for them? That can often just be like a convoluted exercise. And yeah, I think if you want to find your right target audience, and if you want to visualize your target audience, you need to speak to the people who are like owning and understanding any data or research, which helps. And if it's just you, then yeah, it's more complicated.
Yeah. And how does empathy helps improve and increase the user engagement and accessibility, for example?
Yeah. This could be fun. I'm like, what does the audience want to offer any kind of like 1 or 2 sentence definition of empathy? Because I think we all have a maybe slightly different understanding of what it could look like. Happy to hear your answers. I mean, there's one kind of like understanding of empathy, which is like, hey, I hear you. Like, I think, oh yeah, we have Tala saying like putting yourself in someone
Yes.
else's experience. Absolutely, yeah. I think when we look at putting yourself in someone else's experience, that exercise is certainly amazing in fostering empathy. But what's the next step? Like actually, like what is its purpose when it comes to working in user research or working on a customer-centric product? I think, yeah, empathy is super important. I think it's also not one of those things which is useful to just put on a poster and be like, let's have empathy for our users and then just call it a day. You need to do something with it. And I think, I mean, we can also mention inclusivity here too. It's not just purely about empathy. I think I worked on a product which for all accounts and purposes was just not working for the like self-reported female audience. It wasn't working. And I kept presenting that data, you know, time and time again. But the issue was that it was so tied up in so many other parts of the process, like everything, because it's also a physical product, everything from operations to hardware to like the actual like product design of it. It was tied up in so many little things that trying to make an impact on that one part of the process that wasn't working would have taken like roughly 1 to 2 years, speaking to the experts at that company. So yeah, I mean, I think if it's really, really important to think of standards. Yeah, there are accessibility standards. The goalposts are moving. So it means that these two things do get updated and changed over time. But if you're going to put yourself in someone else's experience for the sake of a company or a product or a service, you have to figure out how to actually embed that within the process, how to embed that within like some kind of like method that creates that change for that person or caters to that person. And then understanding, okay, well, is this something which is affecting our target audience? Because yeah, I mean, I would say like accessibility, inclusivity, of course, are extremely important. But if we're talking about like a mobility product that requires certain use of certain like body parts,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to include everybody, sadly. And I think it's also important to understand like, okay, where are we making a commitment? Where are we making an acknowledgement? And where are we making like, okay, maybe we have to acknowledge that we can't do this. That's just my kind of
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So last question before going to the Q&A box. It's what's next for your career after Wolt? Any exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, so actually I left Wolt in May, and I've been doing like a little bit of soul searching in that time. And I think what's kind of relevant for this group is after 9 years in this career, there were many times where I was ready to give up. I was ready to just call it quits, or like just do figure out something else. Like I took a long time off as well, just to kind of really explore what it was that I wanted to do, what my passions were. And I don't know, I think it's really my passion and like returning to what I really enjoy doing, which I really enjoy video games. I'm like a huge gamer. I spend most of my time playing games or listening about content that's related to games, watching those horrible top 10 countdowns of best games of 2023 on YouTube. Mm, but then I was trying to find my passion in my work exclusively, and then trying to like, be like, okay, and then maybe this company or this industry will hop on my back and it will be great. Um, so I don't know, I'm pretty happy to announce that like I can't talk specifics yet, but I'm going to be working in my passion starting from August. So I'm joining a game studio, and it's really, yeah, it feels good. It feels good. Like I just feel it's I think the passion for that, for video games specifically is also what helped me get that job. So, I mean, I have never worked in games. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've always seen from outside, but it absolutely helped me get that job when I was showcasing how passionate I was about it. When, I really wanted to make it clear that it's a big part of my kind of like purpose and my identity. And I don't know, for this group, I would say, for those like struggling to kind of find their footing in their career, to find a job right now in this horrible like market that we're in, think about what you're passionate about, because those, yeah, okay, you'll have different passions in life. Maybe those hobbies or those passions change over time, but the way it makes like you feel as a person and the way that you are as a person when you're actually in your passion or talking about your passion, that's noticeable. Like people notice that. And I'm still very humbled to have gotten this far in my career, and to be now joining a company which sees me for who I am outside of my workday. I can be myself. I can show like my interests, and I really truly hope that people out there can also find that and also leverage it, because it's easy to get demotivated during the job search, but bring a little bit of your passion into it and people will notice. People will hopefully notice in the same way that I was noticed. So thank you very much. Yeah,
Okay.
hope I can leave it on that nice note, and but answer your
That's
questions
great.
first.
And yeah, and well, first of all, congratulations on the new adventure. So right now I was checking the Q&A. Um, So David is asking, what is the most important to work on first? Process, tech stack tooling, or stakeholder presentation?
Good, very, very good question. Okay. I'm gonna say that one thing to kind of like do, as you're exploring all these different things, is to try to answer, or well, try to understand like what those different things look like for your stakeholders. So like during your interview process or when you're already in a company, like just sit down and with the right people and understand what these things look like, what their expectations are, challenges, like make a note of everything that people are saying. And then stakeholder presentation, my answer to that is like, I think it's absolutely important to like tailor your presentation to your audience. I mean, like just like you tailor your CV and motivation letter to a job application, it's going to be the same when you're presenting to people. So the presentation I make to like the higher ups, the VPs, is going to be different to the 5-minute presentation that I make to the entire company, for example. Find a presentation style that works for you, like because that's I can sit here and tell you to watch videos of people presenting confidently on like TED like stages or whatever. No, I just find the one that kind of works for you, and then understand your audience and try to find that kind of like midpoint. And then last thing, tech stack tooling. We all know that it takes a lot of buy-in and process to even get and onboard a new tool, especially as you grow larger in size. It took us 9 months to introduce one tool into like my previous company. So I would say try to make use of what you have, and then work on the process and tooling, make it scrappy, and then work on it in the background as you go along.
Okay, I'm checking. We have time for 2 more questions, more or less. So, someone is asking, what are your techniques or any technique example to keep updated in the UX field?
Yeah, there's a lot of there's like a lot of information that's out there to consume, and not all of it is very useful or easy to digest. My current way of staying up to date is just following a couple people on LinkedIn who I think are interesting and create genuine, like authentic content that I want to like consume. Of course, you're kind of creating a bit of a bubble there, but I do feel a little bit like that's like a good kind of first step to reduce some noise. I don't know. I feel like if you try to just like consume everything, you're gonna absorb nothing. So start small, find some people that you can tolerate ideally, and people you enjoy, and start there. There's like a lot of decent like UX content on YouTube as well. That's of course more easy to consume. If you're more of a reader, then I think LinkedIn is generally fine. But yeah, just start small and try to reduce the noise first.
Okay, and let's go with the last question. How do you see the impact of AI in the role of UX?
Okay. The impact, I mean, I appreciate the question a lot. I have to say, I appreciate the question a lot. I think I might be a bit biased here, but I think AI is one of those tools that is forcing me to be more productive in my job when I wanted to take on the things that I don't want to do at home. Like,
Mhm,
I would love for AI to be able to more effectively clean my house, but AI is now forcing me to do more with less. Like it's impacting hiring. Like I have to now, maybe some people will have to take on the burden of doing something with an AI tool that used to actually be filling a seat, someone's job.
mhm.
So I don't necessarily think it's doing much for me that makes me happy. But I do, of course, see applications for it at scale when you're analyzing data, when you're like just wanting to get like a sense of what's happening, and then you can kind of like build on that with your own thoughts. I don't think AI is going to fully replace like an active researcher who's conducting research. I just feel like if all of the reports that I write are going to be like contingent on AI and they're going to sound like an AI wrote it, and then I like go on LinkedIn and everyone's talking like they use ChatGPT to write their thoughts on the day, isn't that pretty sad? I don't know. Like I don't know. Just call me a romantic, but I don't know. I want people to make spelling mistakes. I want people to like not sound like a corporate mouthpiece. So I do think it has a place. I do think it's going to make an impact. I just think we should be challenging it a little bit more now, rather than just fully embracing it.
Mhm.
Biased.
Okay, so okay, so time's up. But I think this was a very interesting session. So thank you so much, Basim, for being with us today.
Thank
And
you.
also thank you to all the people, all the designers from all around the globe that connected here today. Thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you all next time in our next session. Again, Basim, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Can I just say one quick thing? If you want to
Yeah,
follow me
sure.
on, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I believe that that's on the event somewhere. Like
Yes.
drop me a message.